After 15 weeks of this course, 5 speeches, weekly reading reflections, and plenty of class discussion, we've reached the end of this class. It's a sad time, but we can look at all the improvements we've made along the way and all the laughs we've shared together. We went from giving narrative speeches to a reflective speech looking back on all of our progress. Giving 5 speeches in this class have taught me several things that I can improve on. In this speech, we will be analyzing my informative speech and determining what we could have improved on and what worked well. I did my informative speech on the Cumberland College versus Georgia Tech football game in 1916, which ended in the score 222-0. I gathered the information mostly by using sports-centered sites, as well as a first-hand account of that game in a novel that is no longer in print. I heard about this story a few years ago, and it was the main catalyst of what made me want to do that as the topic. Some of the things that worked well was the personality that I gave during that speech. I made myself personal to the audience and made sure I had high energy to keep them all engaged. I also was very knowledgeable about the topic and was willing to give plenty of information on that topic as well. Some of the things that didn't work were the timing of different things on the speech. Firstly, I went over time by a couple minutes, and we spent a little bit too much time on unnecessary things during the speech. There was too much information in certain parts of the speech, and that led to the time component also going into play, as well as the pace of the speech as well. There were times where some of the parts seemed a little slow, and that also added extra time on the speech that ended up being unnecessary in the long run. I formed the components of my speech by trying to put as much information in the time limit as possible. In the intro, I want to tell the audience about the idea of the game, but leave them in a little bit of suspense to make sure that they want to pay attention to the speech. And in the body, I wanted to tell the story chronologically, like the game is happening live in front of the audience itself. And in the conclusion, I wanted to review everything that was talked about, as well as leave something that sticks with the audience to keep them thinking about the speech long after it's over. The most challenging part of this speech was staying within the time limit. Sometimes I had too much information and there was just not enough time to give it. I had to omit plenty of information as is, and I still ended up plenty of time over the limit as well. Filtering this information was very hard to do because a lot of the information was important and it leads into the story. That was a huge struggle for me as I went through the process because I wanted to tell as much as I could, but it was physically impossible within the time limit. Another big issue with that is that I couldn't see a timer because it was a live speech. I can see a live timer right now on this recording of a speech, but we didn't have that in a live speech, so it was hard to gauge where I was on the time spectrum. Some of the parts of the textbook that helped me was in Chapter 12, the idea of organization to eliminate unnecessary pauses and to stay on track in the speech and to really develop a solid outline so you know where you're going after every part of the speech. And in Chapter 13, delivery and help keeping the pace flowing of the speech. It also helped me because it helped me make movements to attach certain parts to memory. In hindsight, I would change about the speech because I took too much about what led up to the game rather than the game itself. I gave too much information about that. I would also take out stories that seem redundant or unimportant for the most part to stay within that time limit. In this speech, I analyzed my informational essay, talked about the positives, the negatives, and the changes I would have made if I had given it now, knowing all the information I do about communication. This semester has been an absolute blast, and I hope everyone has a safe, healthy, and restful break.